the question that Barca is asking for this remaining 6 matches of the season is how do you deal with and how do you win games without Pedri? Because via Opta
Yeah.
Jose here, Barca has won 89% of their matches this season in the Liga with their best player, 32 of 36 points with 10 wins and 2 draws. And then only 49% of points without him. That's 28 of 57 points with 7 wins, 7 draws, and 5 losses. And when we think of, and once I saw that word, Kevin, my stomach sunk because the second I saw Pedri de Bencia, I went, oh no, because that is a word that's going to be in my life now for what, 11, 12 years. And I didn't want to see it,
Yeah.
but it's different than the Messi thing because Messi, he got them out of trouble. And Messi and Pedri has in 2 different matches gotten 3 points when Barca were going to get one because he popped up and got a goal, something he doesn't really do. And he decided to be the hero, be the guy. But he just makes everything work. He connects the midfield to the forward line. He defends like Gabi, but he attacks with the grace and class and vision of Busquets, and he just does everything right to keep everything together. And Barca on the front foot. And without them, even Frankie de Jong yesterday, he had the most key passes of anybody in that game with 3, the most duels with 11. Busquets wasn't bad in that game, and yet, in that second half, the line of confrontation was way in Barcelona's half of the field. And Garcia and Lenglet and that back line were just completely pinned back as well in their own half. And it wasn't that Busquets, De Jong, and Gabi did anything wrong, but it's that Pedri just has a control over the game. And again, the game, just like Gabi at the U17 level, the game goes at Pedri's speed, and he just controls the entire tempo and rhythm of a
Right.
match.
Right. I mean, like something I said today is that the problem with Barcelona is even when they have the ball, they don't have control. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so I think that when you think about a team having control over a match and losing that control, I mean, you could see it when Pedri went down with the injury. They lost control. And it's something that, I mean, so that linkage player, right? I mean, Barcelona has needed that. You know, they needed it when Rafinha was doing it. They needed it when Rakitic was doing it. They need it now that Pedri's doing it. And right now they don't have anyone to do that. And so what happens is you then have to depend on the back line for too much. And while yeah, Garcia shapes a lovely pass, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's hard to have the last Barcelona defender who I was confident with the ball at his feet was from Chichi before he broke down, right? And that he could drive it forward. He knew what passes to play. He made the necessity for that bridge player less essential. And now, I mean, you've got PK who's in his dotage. You got Garcia who makes me nervous every time he moves too far outside the box because I know he doesn't have the pace nor the physicality to get back and deal with anything and pick up the chihuahua. How can you miss that? So, I mean, I think that the biggest thing right now, though, we talk about match control, is fullbacks. I mean, Xavi was right in saying Barcelona needs fullbacks. I mean, the fullbacks the team has right now are below European standard, and that
Yeah.
includes Jordi Alba. They're all below European standard. And until you rectify that, I just don't see that back line doing anything that it needs to be able to do because once the fullbacks lay out the red carpet for the opposition, I mean, you can have Christ off the cross as your center back, and he's going to be vulnerable. So it's a major problem, and this lack of match control it begins on the flanks, and it just becomes worse as the match progresses and the fullbacks get tired, and the farther forward Alba goes, the more acute that problem becomes. And Dest had a moment, and maybe he will now that he's back from his latest injury. Maybe he'll regain that form. But this team needs fullbacks. I mean, the center backs, you can get by with center backs. I mean, yeah, you'd want someone better than Garcia. You'd want someone more the equal, at least in the neighborhood of Big Arujo. But you can get by with that if your fullbacks aren't grim. I mean, the last fullback I think that Barca had at that level was Abidal, right? I mean, am I crazy? I am crazy, but
well, I think Jordi Alba, like using even yesterday as a microcosm of Jordi Alba, like Jordi Alba played that entire game with that groin injury that he should have come off the field, but with Balde having been injured for 2 years for Barca B, and I mean needs alone, I mean he's kind of lost his way and not been healthy and has not progressed the way he was going to. Juan Miranda just wasn't really to the level once he hit about 18, 19 years old. Just it didn't work out for him. And so there have been other examples of left backs having a chance. I mean, Lucas Digne has gone on to Everton, but it took him as a late bloomer until he was 24, 25 to figure out exactly what he was capable of, and he was never going to get that time at Barcelona. But to me, if Jordi Alba played 70% of games and was fully fit and was subbed off occasionally, I think what Jordi Alba can still provide you is fine, but he has been overstretched, and there's not only too many minutes on those legs, but there are times when, especially in the Copa del Rey, when Alba is in second gear. And I think there's so many times that because of the number of minutes he plays and his importance and the lack of competition, that he winds up being in second gear out of self-preservation because he just isn't going to come off the field for any reason. Because again, even yesterday, who are you going to put in that game? It would have been Dest on the left side. You would have had to put Araujo. Well, no, Araujo went down the game too. So who are you going to even move over to the right back when Dani Alves went out, right? It just becomes a quick mess. And now all of a sudden, Nico Gonzalez is your third, fourth string right back. And that tells you that it's not even to me, it's more worrying, not even the top level of your outside backs, but the depth of that fullback chart is completely nothing. And, one of the things that Barca, I think Kool-Aids are going to have to understand for next season as Barca, Alexis Putellas gets a brace here. So what Barca and Kool-Aids are going to have to understand next season is that I always tell people, pick like 7 names of a 25-man squad and maybe, quote unquote, get them out of my club. But pick like 7 of the 25 or 9 of the 25 if like the club really has a big overhaul or something and could send guys out on loan or something. And then pick like 5 players or 6 players that could potentially brought in and make sure you put numbers next to those. Because that's the whole thing about like overhauling the squad. Like Barcelona can't get rid of Alba, Alves, and Dest. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be the young one in Dest who's going to be the one sold. And you're going to have 39-year-old Dani Alves and 34-year-old Jordi Alba next season. And
the same problem.
Right. So I got a positive conspiracy theory for you here, Kevin. I think because Barcelona is, what are we saying, 98% officially out of Holland Gate. He's going to Man City. It's pretty much done and dusted, meaning Barcelona have dodged the Real Madrid Holland bullet. And if you see him in the Champions League group stage or the final. Like you only see him at max 3 times a season, which is fine by me, for playing for Man City. Fine by me. I think that Barcelona, because of the full back market, like we heard Kessié pretty early, and the other free agents have been known, Christensen or whatever. To get a fullback, you've got to go out and you've got to pay for them. And we've heard Gaia because he plays for Valencia quite a bit, but he's renewing. He's their club captain. It's going to be difficult to get him. And I think that other than Sosa from Stuttgart, of course, Grimaldo has existed in the world, but playing for Benfica, he's going to be also going to be so overpriced. Benfica, they're a 1.5 market hike basically every time, because any Benfica player, based on their previous history on the transfer market, I mean, look at even Darwin Nunez. He's projected to go for maybe 20 million more than he might actually be worth. So Benfica it's going to be tough. It's going to be really pricey to bring Grimaldo. And so now all of a sudden we're talking about Sosa from Stuttgart, and fullback is such a difficult position because if you're good enough, you're not playing fullback anymore. You're going to be adapted to a midfielder, and there just aren't enough high-level fullbacks, not even anymore, but the importance, as you mentioned, of fullbacks in modern football, you've got to have an elite one. And other than Joao Cancelo, and I mean, the list really does get very narrow. It's why I still argue that Jordi Alba is not an elite left back. I agree with you, but also good luck naming 5 better fullbacks in world football than Jordi Alba, which is actually a difficult thing to do, at least offensively and like 25% defensively. But he's still one of the top 3 offensive fullbacks in the world in numbers, in metrics, and all those different things, and how he affects the game. But yeah, defensively, of course, he's not anywhere near the top 30.
Your fullbacks have to defend, right? And
correct.
Other thing about Alba is he's psychologically soft. I mean, when you get a big match, he's not going to show up. And for me, in terms of setting the tone and setting the mood, your veterans are supposed to be the ones that do that. When the most vital player on your team is a guy who's have barely dropped, you got some problems.
Yeah, I mean,